And when a corporation leaves, guess what? It takes with it the jobs, property taxes, sales taxes, investment, stability. All of this, boop, gone. But here's the part most people miss. When a corporation leaves, it also takes the tax payments of every employee who leaves with it. That's a double hit to the city's revenue. And it's not just America. This is a global pattern. Look at London. Wealth taxes and spending cuts are driving out high-income earners. Barely a day passes by without a big investor or entrepreneur exiting after the government abolished. Cities are facing a massive financial doom loop. So let's use Chicago as a great test case. I've been following this for many years. It's where I did my broker training. Chicago's 2026 revenue ordinance is a warning sign. The city is raising taxes on cloud services, on bags, on anything they can reach. They're leaning harder on debt collection, and they're issuing $2.8 billion in new bonds just to cover firefighter back pay, police settlements, and refinancings. This is not money that's going into maintaining that light grid or the city. But here's the truth behind the headlines. Chicago isn't doing this because it wants to. It's doing it because it has to. The city's defined benefit pension plans are massively underfunded, and the obligations are growing faster than the revenue. And now, with the federal funds cut, Chicago is losing millions that used to help cover transit, housing, public safety, and social services. The safety net for the city just lost its safety net. Now, let's add the next layer. Corporations leaving. Citadel, one of the most successful financial firms in the world, left Chicago. Not because it couldn't afford to stay, but because the tax and regulatory environment became too unpredictable. And when a corporation leaves, guess what? It takes with it the jobs, property taxes, sales taxes, investment, stability. All of this, boop, gone.
Economic pressure triggers an exodus. Major firms like Citadel depart not due to insolvency, but unpredictability in taxes and regulations. Each departure drains jobs, property taxes, and investment, compounding the strain on those who remain. High-income individuals similarly relocate to avoid escalating tax burdens. The city loses revenue twice from both the corporation and its employees. Federal support reductions amplify the crisis. With each exit, the remaining population faces higher taxes and reduced services. Chicago isn't alone. Similar patterns emerge globally. The lesson: financial instability creates a self-reinforcing loop, punishing those who cannot leave and weakening the local economy.
But here's the part most people miss. When a corporation leaves, it also takes the tax payments of every employee who leaves with it. That's a double hit to the city's revenue and a double hit to the people that are left behind. And when federal funding is cut at the same time, cities lose both their local and their national revenue lifelines. And it's not just corporations. High-income residents are leaving cities too, and even entire states because of those rising taxes. And when the wealthy leave, well, what does the city lose? I don't know. Let's see. Income tax, property tax, sales tax, investment capital, and those taxes, philanthropy, business creation. And now with federal cuts, cities can't rely on Washington to fill that gap. So the pressure on the remaining taxpayers intensifies. So who really pays that price? Because when corporations leave, the wealthy leave, and the federal funding shrinks, the city still has its bills to pay, don't they? Pensions still come due. Debt still needs servicing. Infrastructure still needs repair. So what happens? Well, the city raises taxes on the people who can't leave, the people who don't have the flexibility to move their job, their family, or their life. And at the same time, services decline. Fewer police, slower emergency response, underfunded schools, closed libraries, delayed infrastructure repairs, dirtier streets, longer wait times for everything. And at the same time, you have higher taxes, fewer services, less federal support. That's the squeeze. So what are cities doing? They're plugging the budget holes with short-term revenue tricks. Chicago's 2026 ordinance leans on new taxes, new fees, and aggressive collections. Not structural fixes. Let's not do that. But they have to cover this widening budget gap. And those defined pensions, well, they're the real pressure point because those are the promises and they have to pay them. Massively underfunded pension obligations continue to grow, forcing cities to raise revenue even as services strain or decline. Can you see this problem? Because taxpayers face a double squeeze, higher taxes, fewer services, and as pension costs rise and borrowing expands, residents pay more while they're getting less. And frankly, this is a pattern that's spreading across all major U.S. cities.
When revenues fall and obligations rise, municipalities respond by taxing residents who lack mobility. Essential services decline, slower emergency responses, underfunded schools, delayed infrastructure, and dirtier streets. Meanwhile, pension obligations and debt continue to grow. Temporary fixes like new fees and aggressive collections patch gaps without addressing structural problems. This double squeeze, higher taxes, reduced services, creates a cycle where residents pay more while receiving less. Chicago's 2026 revenue plan highlights the challenge. It addresses immediate cash needs rather than reforming pensions or service delivery. Across cities, both in the U.S. and internationally, governments face the same difficult choice between fiscal promises and citizen welfare.
And it's not just America. This is a global pattern. Look at London. Wealth taxes and spending cuts are driving out high-income earners. Barely a day passes by without a big investor or entrepreneur exiting after the government abolished a 2-century-old tax break for non-domiciled residents. These are the well-heeled residents hailing from overseas. Look at Toronto and Vancouver. Property taxes and federal transfer reductions are squeezing budgets. Toronto's new 6.9% property tax spike on top of last year's record hike shows how even major global cities are now raising taxes just to maintain basic services as financial pressures intensify. My brother used to own a property in Vancouver, but his property taxes got so high, frankly, he was forced to sell. Well, what about Berlin? Rent caps, tax hikes, and reduced federal support pushed the developers and capital out. Sydney and Melbourne. Massive pension liabilities and shrinking federal contributions are forcing tax increases. Paris, wealth taxes drove out thousands of high net worth individuals, and federal austerity deepened the strain. Everywhere you look, the same cycle is playing out. This is a global issue. Rising obligations, shrinking tax base, federal funding cuts, higher taxes, fewer services, more people leaving, even higher taxes, even fewer services. It is a downward doom loop spiral. Cities, states, and nations built financial systems on the assumption that corporations would stay and pay higher and higher taxes. The wealthy would stay and pay higher and higher taxes. The tax base would grow. Federal support would always be there. Pension obligations would be met. Debt could always be refinanced. But frankly, when taxes rise faster than services improve, people vote with their feet. We can change that too. We can vote with our wallets, and that's what we really need to do to get sound money back in this system again. Because if you're counting on federal funding, look at the debt levels at the government level. Please do the math. We are watching that math break in real time. And what this means, simple. When governments get squeezed, they reach into the pockets of the people who can't leave. They raise taxes, they add fees, they inflate away the currency, they cut out services, they borrow more. And they just hope that no one notices. But you notice, and you are prepared with a foundation of a sound money strategy. So you can always pay your property taxes, but you also have that flexibility. That's why going to the nomad capitalist and to going to Panama and going around the world, that's why it's so important. And this is why gold and silver matter more today than ever.
This pattern isn't confined to the U.S. cities like London, Toronto, Vancouver, Berlin, Sydney, Melbourne, and Paris. All face rising taxes, shrinking federal transfers, and capital flight. Wealthy residents and corporations relocate to more favorable environments, eroding the local tax base. Simultaneously, obligations like pensions and infrastructure commitments continue to grow, creating a spiral of higher taxes, fewer services, and repeated departures. The global doom loop shows the fragility of systems built on assumptions that the wealthy will remain, and governments will maintain steady funding. The more obligations rise without structural reforms, the faster the downward spiral accelerates.
Gold and silver, they don't depend on whether a city can balance its budget, whether a pension fund hits its targets, whether corporations stay or leave, whether the wealthy flee, whether the federal funding gets cut, whether services collapse, whether taxes get boosted. They are outside of the system. They are outside of politics, outside of that debt spiral, outside of the pension crisis, outside of the tax base erosion, outside the federal austerity cycle. Gold and silver, they are the assets you hold when the building manager has lost control of the building. They are your exit door, your independence, your protection. Because frankly, when the tax base walks away and the federal support disappears, the system gets desperate. But when you hold real, tangible, physical assets, you're not dependent on the system at all. And this is really why it is so important to create that local community around you. Because in order to sustain a reasonable standard of living, you have to have easy availability and surety in food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation. That community around you can help, and you need to make sure that you can maintain that roof over your head, your last stand.
As governments squeeze residents through taxes, fees, and inflation, individuals exercise financial sovereignty. People relocate, invest strategically, or adopt alternative wealth strategies to avoid systemic risk. Sound money principles, diversification, and portable assets empower citizens to protect themselves from fiscal mismanagement. Gold and silver, physical assets outside governmental control, offer stability regardless of tax hikes, pension crises, or service cuts. They are independent, tangible stores of value. This strategy extends beyond personal security. Communities can build local resilience, ensuring access to essential resources like food, energy, and security. Individual action and community coordination become crucial in navigating.
The Zang Enterprise Sound Money Strategy addresses all of these issues and so much more. So if you don't have your strategy in place yet, give us a call, get that done. They'll help you understand what gold and what silver you need to accomplish all of your goals. And we have to take this not just to the local community, but to the global community. We got to get redeemable gold back in the system again. We don't have any choice about it. Because if we do not, well, what's the World Economic Forum say? By 2030, you will own nothing. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be happy. You own gold and silver, and I know that those spot markets are running right now, and that always makes people feel good, but it really doesn't matter because it's just a lie. It is not showing you the true fundamental value of an ounce of gold and an ounce of silver. I pay attention to it because you pay attention to it. But the reality is, and I can't give you a lot of guarantees. I can guarantee that it'll show up and do the work because I have control over that. But here's another guarantee that I can give you. At some point, all assets, all instruments go to their true fundamental value. With government debt-based money, that number is zero. This $10 trillion Bolivar note attests to that. Doesn't matter how many zeros are at the end. 10 trillion times zero is still zero. But gold and silver, not even marginally close. And I could tell you right now, 40,000, 2,000, but the more of this that they do, the higher that number goes. Just like my $10 trillion Zimbabwe note, I can buy nothing with it. But gold and silver in Zimbabwe, you can protect everything that you have and you can accumulate even more. So until next we meet, let's come together in community. Let's help each other on a local basis. And let's spread this help on a global basis. This is our opportunity. And I know, absolutely, we can do this.
Local and global communities must prepare for financial uncertainty. Tangible assets like precious metals provide insulation from government debt crises. Citizens should prioritize self-reliance, secure resources, and maintain networks for bartering and mutual aid. Strategic planning ensures stability even as public services falter. By understanding systemic vulnerabilities, individuals can adapt, preserve wealth, and sustain quality of life. Community-focused strategies complement personal financial protection, creating redundancy in an unpredictable world. The lesson: governments may falter, obligations may rise, and taxes may increase, but informed, proactive citizens with resilient strategies can thrive despite fiscal turbulence, protecting themselves and their communities.